Let's bring our local poly panel in. We've got Deb Morris, who's the member for Brindabella and Shadow Minister for Police, Emergency Services and Community Safety, and Tamus Werner-Gibbings, who is the member for Brindabella on the Labor side. Tamus and Deb, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Steve. Good morning, Deb.
Let's start with this police issue. We've got the smallest number of police per capita of anywhere in the country. That's a given. We now have a budget blowout of near enough to $400 million. The government last year promised to add additional police over the next 5 years, which wasn't enough to start with and is going to put us further behind the 8 ball at the end of that 5 years than we already are. And now I'm hearing from senior police that there's pressure on them not to fill the gaps because there's not enough money to go around. Tamus, I mean, this is the foremost role of any government is to keep its people safe.
Yes, Stephen, I have a fairly different take on that. I was with Deb in the committee meetings last week with the minister, and she was sitting next to the AC, maybe, beg your pardon, it was this week, it travels very quickly. She was sitting next to the police commissioner, and the plan that she laid out to increase the number of police and improve retention, it is a clear plan to bring extra resources to the police. And you mentioned the budget blowout, but she did not say that would have any impact on ACT Labor's commitment.
But Deb, we're about conservatively, and depending on who you talk to, somewhere between 200 and 300 police short of where we should be. The plan is to add another 125 over 5 years. Now, population growth means that 125 over 5 years is going to be less than where we are now per capita.
Yeah, that's right. Look, our police are really stretched thin on the ground. We do have the smallest police force per capita in Australia, and I wish it was as simple as Tamus was saying. But what we are seeing is that while there might be some, very humble and modest efforts to add to our police force, the separation rate is one of the largest in Australia as well. So that's the other end of the spectrum that the government needs to pay attention to. And when you've got very attractive incentives for police officers to join police forces over the border in New South Wales, the pay rises that they've been offered, it's very difficult for the ACT to compete when here in Canberra, not only do we have the smallest police force, but we also have among the lowest paid police force in Australia.
And Tamus, that's the thing you've got to take into account here, and it's not the ACT government's fault, I realise that, is that because we contract the AFP to do our policing and the federal government won't pay the AFP properly, we've got that double whammy that means we've got to really lift our game locally.
I think Marissa Patterson, the new police minister, is doing exactly that. She has been in extremely close contact with ACT policing. From what I understand, the relationship that she's been able to build in a very short time with the police force is outstanding. She knows exactly what she's doing. I'm looking forward to the results coming through, quite frankly.
All right, well, I guess the proof will be in the pudding, but unfortunately for people like Caroline Buchanan and Jeff, who just emailed us, and the people who live out in Holt, it'll be too little too late. Now, I want to... sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say you're spot on, Steve. I actually met Jeff on the campaign trail, and it's a pretty devastating story, and sadly his story is not isolated, as we've seen with Caroline as well. We hear this time and time again that police are having to pick and choose which crimes they can attend to because they're stretched so thin, and then you've got the added component of half the time they're out there rearresting people that they've already arrested who are in the community on bail. So
in 2016, my bike was stolen on the campaign trail.
Well, there you go. So you know firsthand. But it's interesting here, and this is the point that all police forces tell me, and I have a lot of contact with senior police in a number of jurisdictions, is that the first thing that gets put by the wayside whenever there's a resource stretch is proactive policing. So the cops know who the crims are. And if they resource properly, they can go and kick down doors and prevent crime. Unfortunately, when they've got to play catch-up, that's the stuff that goes by the wayside. So it's actually a false economy not to fund our police properly.
Sorry, Tamus. No, I was just going to say one of the questions that I put to the CPO and the Minister during annual reports this week is what is the role of prevention and deterrence in policing? Because a lot of our legislative settings seem to undermine that front of policing when it plays a very huge role in police shouldn't just be responding to crime, but we should have the laws in place to make it easier to prevent crime. And one of the classic cases of that is anti-consorting laws. Canberra is a very popular destination for bikie gangs to hold their annual meets, and I questioned the government on this. We had Hells Angels, the Rebels, the Comancheros all descend on Canberra.
And the Finks more recently, which are one of the worst groups.
Yeah. And if we had simple laws like anti-consorting laws, which every other jurisdiction in Australia has, then this would never happen. And we did get an admission from the CPO that our current legislative environment allows them to do just that.
So, Tamis, you want to respond to that?
Oh, well, I was going to say a couple of very quick points. One, like in the stats in the annual reports that we've been reading, there is no indication that crime is going up. In fact, quite the contrary. Now, it's not across the board, but crime rates in a variety, I would say most sectors, are reducing. And the issue, as has been made consistently with anti-consorting laws, is they are, like, there's a real problem in how they would clash with the Human Rights Act. And I asked the Minister for Human Rights yesterday, and it's a real problem with freedom of association. The ACT.
Well, I don't believe that criminal outlaw bikie crime should have the freedom to associate.
But the ACT has a work on balancing crime prevention and protecting individuals' freedoms, right? And like it is a really, really, really big stick in response to a perceived threat. Well, it's inconsistent with basic human rights principles.
It works in every other jurisdiction, Tamis. And you previously, before the election, you guys were hamstrung by the Greens and their view that the police are the problem and the criminals are the real victims. You don't have that problem anymore.
The fact that it works isn't the information that the Minister provided us in the committee. And Deb was there when she said that. It's a type of law it's really open to misuse, right? It can marginalise vulnerable, disadvantaged members of the community. And the police have the tools under ACT's crime laws already to fight serious and organised crime.
Just not the resources. Now, I want to move on to other issues here. The light rail construction in Civic is creating havoc with local businesses, particularly hospitality businesses who are already behind the eight ball. Tamis, the response from the Treasurer, Chris Steele, that, if they survive the next 3 years of construction, everything will be fine. Well, they've got to get through that first.
That wasn't the words that he used.
That's pretty much what he said.
It is disruptive. Like, this is a big vision that the ACT government ACT Labor has gone consistently to elections with in 2016 and 2020 and 2024, a commitment to deliver like a city-making project that has been the new element is going to create 1,000 jobs, completely change the way that people get into and get out of the city from the south. There is disruption, but it should be manageable. The government is putting in the government is putting in means of support for businesses to get through a disruptive period.
Well, and that's the points I want to address, because Tamis is right that any major thing like this is going to cause disruption. There's nothing you can do about that. But it's how you respond to it. And the businesses that I speak to, and I do speak to them more regularly than our politicians do, unfortunately, are saying that there's no compensation, and the only support they're getting is a few signs that are put up that nobody can actually see.
Sorry, was this me or Deb?
No, Deb. Sorry,
yeah.
I beg pardon.
Yeah, no, happy to jump in there. Look, local businesses are the backbone of our local economy, so we do need to be ensuring that over the next few years, as we acknowledge that light rail construction will be very destructive to their business operations, and it is incumbent on the government that they do put up measures to help them not just survive the next few years, but hopefully to thrive as well. And the ACT, at the best of times, is a very difficult environment for businesses to thrive, because we do have some of the highest taxation settings for businesses and regulations. And I really don't think, I'm not convinced that chucking a few signs up is going to help those businesses to survive. So I do think the government needs to consider ways that they can put, some relief through, whether it's, concessions to their rates, commercial rates, just to take that little bit of pressure off to help see them through the next few years.
There's a bunch of other things I want to discuss, but I want to throw Tamis a bone here just so that he doesn't think it's all one-sided. This issue with this peace garden in Ainslie. Now, the government sold a government house, and look, I've only seen pictures of it, which says to me it needs to be knocked down. Now, I'm all for the government doing this, because clearly it's an asset that needs to get turned over, but the media reports suggest that the Liberals, the Greens and the Independents are all on the side of protecting this place. You guys have got the number in the Assembly, Deb. Why didn't you do something?
Look, I agree that Garden does not, the Canberra Youth Residential Service that is currently been operating in this area, volunteers have spent the past 3 years investing their own time, their own money to create this facility. So I can understand. I just want to acknowledge why they would be very disappointed at this move. If you've spent 3 years doing that, it's very hard to see that all that work undone when you've done it pro bono. But I suppose my hope in this is that the ACT government hasn't used this move to generate funding to pay for the tram, which is what we've seen them do through the sales of public housing assets in the past. So hopefully that's not the case, but I can understand where the community is coming from. But the decision's been made and the property has been sold. And
Tamus, that's the kicker here, that $1.3 million that apparently this place was sold for, it needs to be fully invested back into public housing or public facilities, doesn't it? Because that's been one of the criticisms of this government, is the number of public housing dwellings have gone backwards in the last 10 years.
Yeah, so I will say yes without having any insight into where the money goes or being on ERC. The knocking down the house, or beg your pardon, selling the house it's part of the government's commitment. Like you said, to improve the sustainability and basic livability of ACT public housing. I understand, well, actually, I don't understand. I know that the minister has been in touch with the volunteer who was responsible for organising and put so much effort into the Peace Garden, and Minister Berry is committed to finding alternative areas to re-establish a similar garden on places that aren't going to be vulnerable.
Well, let's hope that happens. Deb Morris, Tamus Werner-Gibbings, good to talk to you. We'll catch up next week.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Tamus Werner-Gibbings is the member for Brindabella. Deb Morris is the Shadow Minister for Police, Emergency Services and Community Safety. It is 8 minutes to 8.